Well, thank you. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It is Thursday, February 20th at 9:30. We'll begin with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Dan Zyson,
Here.
Commissioner Fincher,
Here.
Commissioner Hernandez, Commissioner Lawrence, Commissioner Layton, Commissioner Millhaven,
Here.
Commissioner Toma,
Here.
Commissioner Whitney, Commissioner Whitney, Vice Chair Curley, and Chairman Lindblom.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll proceed with the announcements. This meeting has been noticed in accordance with Open Meeting Law ARS 38-431. Agendas are available within 24 hours of each meeting in the Maricopa County Planning and Development Office and are also available on the Planning and Development website 1 week prior to the meeting at www.maricopa.gov/planning. With respect to the zipper meeting process, items will be considered in the order they appear on the agenda unless otherwise agreed to by the commission. Anyone wishing to speak shall notify staff via email or raise your hand within GoToWebinar. The amount of time allowed for speaking shall be at the discretion of the commission chair. Staff will provide the chairman with the names of persons who are registered and noted desire to comment, and those registered participants who have raised their hand. The chairman will call on each named participant one at a time. That's it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we will then move forward with our agenda. Item 1 is discussion regarding the update of the Framework 2040 Comprehensive Plan being presented by Mr. Adam Cannon, according to the agenda, but I don't see Adam.
Good.
Adam's online.
Well, thank you, Chair
You,
and fellow commissioners. I'm Matt Kleisico. Adam is on the line. He is unfortunately a little under the weather today, so we're going to go ahead and stand in for Adam and give you a little summary on the work that we've been doing for the comprehensive plan update for Maricopa County. And so the thought this morning is that we'll take you through a little bit of the background in terms of getting everyone up to speed about the comprehensive plan itself. So this might be a refresher for some, might be new to others. So hopefully you find it informational. We'll share a little bit of the process and how we're going to be taking the residents through this update process. And then we'll also talk about some of the public outreach that we've been doing as we got to this process underway. So we greatly appreciate the opportunity to present to you this morning. And then of course, we'll have opportunity at the end for questions and responses. And so I'll just jump in here. A quick pause on the team itself. As you can imagine, a project like this takes a great number of assistance in terms of pulling this together and managing the update process. On the county side, as we mentioned at the start, Adam Cannon is the project manager and point of contact. With Adam, we have then Tom, Darren, and Rachel as the other technical supporting team that oversee the process on a day-to-day basis. I myself work for Michael Baker International. We were the consultant hired to assist on this process. As you can see, I'm also supported by other team members and other firms that are part of our consultant team. We have assisted many communities across Arizona with updating these types of long-range planning documents. So we're excited to be part of this process, but also excited to bring some of our experiences to this effort and see it through to a successful completion. Now, to start, maybe the first place we want to go is, what is a comprehensive plan? What does it entail? And so This slide is something I like to pause on. The graphic you can see kind of lays it out, but the highlights are the comprehensive plan is a state mandated plan. All counties in Arizona must have a comprehensive plan. State also mandates that those comprehensive plans must address specific topics or elements. And so you can see on the slide there, those topics or elements that are starred are the required elements that statute says must be included in the comprehensive plan. So discussions on land use, circulation, water, and so on, you see must be in the plan. But that does not stop us from also including additional topical areas that the county may feel is relevant and important to the issues and opportunities and challenges that exist within the county. So for example, the current comprehensive plan has a discussion on economic growth. So now all of that, though, as you can see from the slide, it all is intended to be that forward-looking document of capturing the views of the community. And those views of the community then function as the roadmap. We identify where we want to be, and this roadmap helps us ensure that, as you can see from the last box there, that our short-term decisions are in alignment with our long-term vision, right? So a pretty straightforward approach that if we look out 10, 20 years down the line, let's identify where we want to be so that we make sure that as we make decisions, we end up where we're going as opposed to somewhere where we didn't intend. And so all of that is typically supported within the comprehensive plan through a series of goals and policies. And so all of those together create that long-term vision. Now, with a little benefit of understanding the concept and need for a comprehensive plan, you might be asking yourself, well, why are we doing this now? Well, certainly one of the triggers would be that the last update to the comprehensive plan occurred back in 2016. So it's coming up on 10 years, so it's good practice to be updating your comprehensive plan to ensure that you're addressing new data, right? We have new conditions, new issues out there, and we want to make sure that the plan is fresh and understanding of those issues. So we want to have the opportunity to identify and address those new data sets and projected conditions. We also want to just reevaluate that vision that I spoke about in the previous slide, right? 10 years ago, we had this viewpoint of where we want to go. Has that viewpoint changed? Has it served us well? And we want to preserve that, because often this process is not about finding areas of change, but also finding areas that are working well and making sure that we nurture those. So we want to reevaluate that. We also want to look at other plans that the county's working on. The county has many long-range plans that are used to guide specific aspects of the county, whether it be transportation or open space. And those master plans get updated with goals and policies and projects. And so it's very important that we can use this opportunity for the comprehensive plan to align with all of those so that not only is the comprehensive plan moving the county forward, but it's in sync and in concert with those other initiatives across all departments. And then, of course, the part that might get overlooked sometimes is the implementation of the comprehensive plan. While statute says we must have a comprehensive plan, it actually does not mandate that you have to identify how to implement the plan. But this gives us an opportunity to look at the goals and policies and start identifying some near, mid, and long-term actions about how can we go about achieving these markers that we've identified for the county. So all of those together really start to create that initiative, right, to show the value in going through this comprehensive plan update. And so it's not just something that is done on a haphazard basis. It's something that should be done on a regular time frame, and so the county is being proactive and starting early to get this process going so that we can bring a refreshed plan to the community within the project timeline. So hopefully we've helped by clarifying a little bit about what the comprehensive plan is, why we're going through this update process. The next maybe natural question is, well, what does the comprehensive plan cover? Yes, it's a comprehensive plan for Maricopa County, but based on statute, the comprehensive plan for Maricopa County actually applies to the unincorporated areas of the county. So for this particular effort and aspect, we're looking at the unincorporated areas. So this map, I know it's a little small for maybe some, but you can see the overall county. We're familiar with that shape. But what you see, the blue areas on this map, those are all the municipal limits.
Excuse me, I lost audio.
County. And then the orange areas are our tribal lands. All of those areas, those communities within their county's comprehensive plan oversees or governs all those other areas outside of the blue and the orange areas. So, so it's, I think, helpful just visually to see what areas consist of that unincorporated portion of the county. And again, the municipalities have their general plans, which statute calls municipal plans, general plans, and county plans as comprehensive plans. So if you hear those terms out in the community, they're very similar in their function, but it tells you, oh, that must be for a city or town. And if it's a comprehensive plan, that's for a county. Now, one of the other things that we wanted to touch on that I think is maybe beneficial, especially for commissioners such as yourself who go through decision process, is understanding where the comprehensive plan comes into the overall development process. And so we like to utilize this kind of inverted pyramid to capture how this plays into that broader development progression. And so we like to talk about the comprehensive plan as that 30,000 foot document, right? It's the broadest plan that the county utilizes. And so it's more of a policy document, right? Where as we start getting down this timeline, you'll see that we start to get more precise, right? From a comprehensive plan that is a broad policy document, we might start to get into area plans. And area plans recognize the nuances that might exist in particular portions of unincorporated Maricopa County. So Tonopah might have unique conditions compared to Rio Verde. And so area plans are often used to capture that uniqueness. So while the comprehensive plan might have a very broad goal or policy, we might hear through the process, yeah, but in our area, it's a little nuanced. And so that's where an area plan comes in, and it can start to address some of those nuances in a more elegant or clear way. So with the benefit of the comprehensive plan and the area plans, then we start getting into the zoning code, and that zoning code starts to become regulatory, right? That is law. It actually identifies what are specific uses that are allowed on a property. So comprehensive plan from a land use standpoint might say this area is appropriate for residential, this area is appropriate for commercial, but doesn't get into too much detail about what type of residential, what type of commercial. When you get to the zoning code, as you may all be familiar with, we start to get very specific in our zoning districts. What is single family? What is multifamily? What are setbacks? What are parking requirements? What is lighting? Open space? All of those very stringent and specific conditions are captured in our zoning ordinance. And then from there, we can start getting into site planning for non-residential projects or plats, right, for residential projects. And so now we're starting to do our construction plans. And then once you get your construction plans, you get into your building permits. So now we're really getting real close to the ground. And then once you get your building permits, now you're going vertical and you're actually constructing. So that's, hopefully you enjoyed that little journey, but it really is emphasizing that we're trying to take a broad brush look at the county. We recognize we're going to come across points where there are nuances, and then we're going to have to ask ourselves, are those nuances things that we really need to capture in the comprehensive plan, or are there other tools that the county has that can capture those nuances? So let's talk a little bit now that we've hopefully got a foundation about the comprehensive plan itself, why we're doing it, how it plays into some of the other things that we use to make decisions. Let's talk about the process for this comprehensive plan update overall. There's a lot of information on this graphic, I will say. If you have the time and absorb it, it can tell you a lot, but I'll at least give you the highlights that this graphic is intended to convey across the top that there's 3 phases for this effort, right? Phase 1, we're looking at existing conditions, basically. So we want to assess where we are today. Then we get into phase 2 and we start to take that assessment information and ask ourselves, where do we want to go? And start developing those goals and policies to support that notion. And then with the benefit of knowing where we want to go, we're able to then ask ourselves, how do we get there? What are some of those implementation or action items that I mentioned? And then from the benefit of that, you can imagine we go into phase 3, which is the final preparation of the document and the approval process. So all of this really comes together over an extended period of time. There's a lot of outreach we want to get through to get out to the public, to hear from them. This is a community-driven plan, so we need to provide those opportunities to hear from the public, and so that obviously takes time to make sure that we're reaching all of the residents that are important to this process. So you can see from the slide that all of this is anticipated to conclude in spring of 2026. So we're still a year plus out from the final adoption process of this effort. And so you can see from the orange little arrow on our graphic here, we're just kind of finalizing our phase 1 effort. We've gone through our existing conditions analysis, and we've gone through a robust public outreach effort. And so then as we start to report this outreach, we'll transition into phase 2 and go back out to the public and share with them, here's some of the findings we identified through that phase 1, and here's some of the information that you residents shared with us through that. And the idea is, of course, all of that information can enlighten all of us to then make better decisions about any policy changes that we'd like to see in the plan, whether at the vision, goal, or policy level. So again, this graphic, there's a lot of other nuances to inform people if they're interested, so you can absorb this. One thing I also would mention is this graphic is on the project website. The website is framework2040.com, and if you have not been to it, I might be a little biased, but I think it's a great website, and it has a lot of nice information, but it also has a lot of engaging information. So there's some frequently asked questions, and of course there's an opportunity to sign up for updates, and there's also public outreach content that we'll be touching on in a few future slides. So hopefully this kind of just at least gives you an understanding of how this process moves through the different phases and what the overall timeline is from adoption. And within that, we are preserving that flexibility to respond to feedback that we hear. So if we hear that we're getting a lot of good input from the community, we might look to try to continue that and allow residents to share more information. And so as we go through the process, we will adjust certain components of it to respond to how the community is reacting to our different outreach efforts. So hopefully you have some comfort with the comprehensive plan and the process. What we wanted to discuss a little bit with you is some of those existing conditions that we have been analyzing, and I mentioned as part of that phase one, that will be maybe informative to you, maybe validate some of thoughts that you had, and hopefully convey the type of conditions that we are analyzing through this process. So I think you did get the brief insights as part of your packet. We're not going to go through all of the information that was included in that, but we did pull out a couple highlights from that just to share this morning. But again, the whole idea here is to recognize that in addition to understanding what community members want, we also want to make sure that we're looking at the data, we're analyzing that, and seeing if there's trends that can inform us and allow us to make better decisions as we move through this update process. So here we go with our map again. So we understand colors a little different here, but the orange or yellow areas and the burnt orange areas are those municipal limits as well as the tribal lands. So those areas are not part of this update effort, but every area outside of that is unincorporated Maricopa County, and as statute would refer to it as area of jurisdiction for this comprehensive plan. Now, really what I want to emphasize on this graphic that's probably not lost on those on this commission is Maricopa County is over 9,000 square miles. That is a lot of land. And to put it in perspective, that is bigger than the state of New Jersey. And so if we actually then look at unincorporated Maricopa County, which is 65, almost 6,600 square miles, that's bigger than 3 states. So regardless of how you look at it, the whole county or unincorporated Maricopa County, there's a lot of land area to consider and be mindful of. And so I think that's another thing that as you kind of progress from the eastern coast of the nation out to the west, we got wide open spaces and larger counties and larger areas of jurisdiction, and thus the planning process becomes much more involved, right, to make sure that we're not overlooking anything or rushing through anything given that that area of jurisdiction. So the other area that of course we want to look at is growth, and with growth we look at population. And we want to look at where we've been. So the table on the left identifies census data and population conditions, both for incorporated areas in the county. So the first 2 columns, well, the first column is the year, but the first 2 columns after that identify population and rate of growth for incorporated areas. So those are cities and towns. The last 2 columns identify unincorporated population and the growth rate for those areas. So you can see that historically, right, at the end of the 90s, going into the 2000s, we had extreme growth, and we thought, wow, that's a lot of growth. Well, then we had more growth from 2000 to 2010, you know, upwards of 35% there, as you can see on that last column. And then since the 2010, that growth rate has come down, right? And we see 8% in 2020 there, from 2010 to 2020, and just a slight shift from 2020 to 2022, which was the most current data from a census standpoint. But we know we've seen growth significantly within the county since 2022. And so we start to now look at projections of growth. And Maricopa Association of Governments, MAG, for the MAG region, manages a model that does projections for growth, both on population and employment. And so that's what you see on the right-hand side of this slide is the projected population growth in unincorporated Maricopa County all the way out to 2060. So you can see the model is still projecting growth in the county, although at a slower rate. But this is all telling, right? It's recognizing that we've seen some historical growth in the county in the past, and we continue to anticipate that growth will be coming to Maricopa County. And so while other counties maybe in the country are experiencing population loss, we all know Arizona is not experiencing that. We are certainly experiencing growth. And so this process is about recognizing that, but it's also not about growth for growth's sake. It's also about understanding just what that means and where growth pressure exists. So I think that's one thing we try to emphasize with residents when we go out is statute says that the comprehensive plan must address growth, the topic or element, and residents often view that as, why are you advocating for growth? And that's actually not what we're doing. We're actually wanting to recognize the pressure of growth and making sure that we're being responsive to that and addressing any policies of where that pressure might exist and anticipate it or respond to it. So one of the other things about growth is also the annexation condition, right? So while we talk about unincorporated Maricopa County as being a very large area, from year to year, interestingly, that unincorporated in Maricopa County actually shrinks, right? We end up annexing land into our municipalities, or our municipalities annex land into them. And so this table here was an analysis we did just to see how much has that occurred since 2010. So from 2010 to 2022, you can see in that middle line there that 65 square miles was actually annexed into municipalities over that time period. And so one of the things we like to do to kind of just to evaluate that annexation process is also to see how does that relate to population density. And so that last column is just in 2010, you can see that based on the population and the amount of unincorporated area, we had approximately 40 people per square mile. But now at the most recent data from 2022, we see that population increase, but then we see that decrease in the unincorporated areas that were annexed, and thus an outcome is an increase in population density in the county from 40 people square mile to 44. So again, all of these are just data inputs, and so we want to look at all of these to see if they start to tell us areas that we may want to be mindful of and look at if we need certain responses to that. So another area that we look at that I think everyone would most be interested in is, where is this growth occurring? And so this is a great map that we put together, a heat map, right? We've seen these in application and other uses, but in this instance, we're looking at population and where has population arrived since 2010 to 2022. And so you can see that where the tables on the right identify the same growth rates for unincorporated county as well as incorporated areas, but the map itself shows where that population increase has happened and how prevalent. And so maybe consistent with some of your expectations and what we've heard through the news and through development is the West Valley is seeing a lot of that growth, right? The East Valley has less and less area to or unincorporated area to develop. We still see pockets, right, in that East Valley, but the most highlighted population growth areas you can see are out along the 303 in the West Valley. And so again, this starts to help us understand what areas are feeling growth pressure. And then we can start looking at those areas to understand, are there unique conditions with that growth pressure and what type of pressure are they experiencing? And then we go from there about responses to that in our goals and policies. Now, another graphic, and this one can get a little nuanced, so I'll walk us through it. But this graphic is actually showing existing land use. So Maricopa Association of Governments actually goes out to all the entities within MAG region and asks them and identifies what existing land uses are across the region. And then they generalize them over these common land use types. So we have future land use plans, right? The county has plans that say this is our future land use. This graphic is showing how is the land actually being used today, not what we plan for it, but how is it vacant today? Is it residential, agriculture? And so you can see some of those other land use categories. But of the existing land uses, the top four, you can see open space, and the green areas is certainly the most prevalent open space area. And a large amount of that open space is in protected areas, right? And so I would emphasize that a good portion of that area that is identified as green is most likely staying green from any planning standpoint because it's an existing protected natural open space area. After that, you can see some of the hatched areas that have that kind of green wide hatch on it. Those are vacant lands. So we, in this graphic, you know, it's a very broad title of vacant, but those vacant lands are areas that we want to start looking at, right? Because those are the types of land that might be getting growth pressure depending on what type of development might be able to occur there. So the vacant land is certainly land that we look at through this planning process. Agriculture land, you can see is, although it looks like a small percentage, is still a significant amount of land given the size of Maricopa County. And we all know that agricultural land is important to us, but it also often can be converted to development. And so that's another area that we look at. And then we have single family residential as another significant portion of that. So I would emphasize in this graphic, all the incorporated areas you can see is one color. So to try and simplify it and not have too many colors on the map, we identified all those as one color because they're part of the municipality. So this graphic and all the colors that you see, if they jump out at you, that means they're in unincorporated areas. If it's all tan, then that means they're within an incorporated municipality. Of course, they have existing land use as well, but just for the simplicity of this graphic, it was not shown. Now, this is an interesting one. County islands. So within the state, all our municipalities, while we can look at this map and see the gray areas, again, are all our municipal limits. All our municipalities also have planning areas. Those planning areas are the boundaries that cities and towns identify of what they could potentially grow to. Those planning areas are essentially what the cities and towns are identifying. These are areas we may annex if we go through the process and all the steps that statute requires. So it's not an absolute, but it does identify this is what a city is anticipating they may annex. So thus, what we wanted to do with this graphic is capture within that unincorporated area what lands could potentially be annexed as part of a municipal planning area. So all of the dark blue that you see there, those are all lands that are included within a municipality's planning area. So I emphasize that those planning areas are still part of unincorporated Maricopa County, right? They haven't been annexed yet. They're just in a boundary that's just a line. But we want to recognize the nuances between all of those conditions, because a third nuance, so we have unincorporated areas which are outside all of that, right? They have no color. Then we have the dark blue areas that might be on the fringe, which is those areas that are in a planning boundary that might be annexed. Then if you squint, you can see within the gray areas, there's a lot of little blue dots. All those blue dots are county islands. And those county islands are unincorporated areas that are completely surrounded by municipalities. And so those unincorporated areas are still managed by Maricopa County. And interestingly, there is a lot of little areas when you look at the vastness of Maricopa County. So that last bullet point, you can see within the unincorporated, or within Maricopa County, there's 432 county islands that are less than 500 acres in size. There's many that are less than 100 acres in size. And so those create all little nuances, right? How does the county help or manage those small county islands? How do we manage those areas on the fringe that might be in a planning area? So they might be getting more growth pressure than those areas that are outside that aren't necessarily colored on this map, but are still part of unincorporated Maricopa County. So you may see where I'm going there. Of part of this process might be recognizing the nuances of different conditions and identifying maybe different considerations for those areas. So again, trying to understand as we go out to the public what factors are important to them. And we've heard through outreach that especially county islands have those unique conditions compared to those that might be on the fringe or edge of municipal areas. So another graphic that I would pause on is housing. Of course, housing is very top of mind across Arizona, and it arcs back to that population discussion, right? And so housing, we could have another whole meeting on housing and talking about the data we're looking at and the condition itself. This graphic was just shown to kind of highlight and emphasize we understand the challenge. And the challenge here, this graphic is showing, and this one is unique in that it is actually looking at all of Maricopa County. So this is combining both incorporated and unincorporated Maricopa County. But overall, this is showing that that it's kind of confusing because it's 30 and 30. 30% of households in Maricopa County are spending 30% or more of their household income on housing expenses. And so you can see from the text that 30% amounts to almost 500,000 households. That's a large number, right? That's spending 30% of their income on housing expenses. And then when we ask ourselves, well, okay, 30%, yes, that's a lot, and that's a high number, 500,000. But what if we were even to increase that to who's spending 50% or more of their income? And that is 14%. So, you know, almost half of that 500,000 is spending 50% or more on their housing expenses. And so I think that just affirms also what we heard through some of our preliminary analysis of some of the outreach that we're doing and the survey questions that we're doing. We did ask residents, what's important to you? Is it housing availability or housing affordability? And many have all identified that it's not about availability, it's about affordability. And this graphic might emphasize that. So again, very interesting and informative areas that we're looking at, but hopefully that helps to convey, we recognize it, we're looking at it, but we want to also inform the commission that we are wanting to hear from you to make sure that we continue to hear from our residents about the importance of this topic. So there's maybe I was a little longer winded than I'd planned about the existing conditions. I wanted to also talk about the in-person and online outreach that we've been conducting, because of course, as I mentioned up front, this is a community-driven process, so this is a very important component, the outreach. I mean, it's significant in terms of we want to hear from residents. And so we've prepared a process to get out to the community, to make sure we try to give opportunity for residents to participate on their own time. And so with that, we first had in our first surge of outreach, we have 3 surges of outreach planned, but in our first surge, we had, that's not shown on this specific graphic, we first had a grand virtual meeting. So we had a virtual meeting for the county overall to kick off this effort in early November. And that allowed anyone that was interested to join a Zoom meeting, just as some are joining this meeting this morning. And we went through some of the information that we're sharing with you this morning, but then also laid out some of the outreach efforts that those residents can participate in. Naturally, that wasn't, we felt, enough to get out to the public. And so we held in-person meetings in one location in every supervisor district. And so you can see the locations and dates of those events. And so we will continue to use this kind of same strategy, but we will look at trying to identify maybe alternative locations for some of these meetings to, again, see if we can move locations to allow other residents who might be interested or who might favor to join in person that opportunity. So we'll continue to offer it online. We record it and then we put it on the project website, so residents are always able to go back and look at that information. And we also made a diligent effort to ensure that the online outreach that I'll be touching on in just a few slides is consistent with the in-person outreach that we conduct as well, so that we can tabulate all of that data together and that we don't have discrepancies or nuances between what we're asking or learning in our in-person meetings compared to what we're hearing online. So again, all of this is very orchestrated, and we want to make sure that that the data we're reporting on is consistent and valuable and informative. So some of those outreach efforts I wanted to touch on that are virtual or digital are turning out to be, I think, very successful. And one of those is the Idea Wall. The Idea Wall is almost just as it sounds. It's a virtual space that residents can go, and if you've ever participated in our good old tried and true planning Post-it note exercise. Planners love our Post-it notes, and you've probably been to those public meetings where you write your ideas and slap them on a board. Well, this is a digital board, but it lets residents, as you can see on the graphic here, it lets residents post pictures and share their ideas for how can we move Maricopa County forward in the future. And so this tool has turned out to be great, not only in that residents are able to kind of share a more complete thought, right? So you can see the longer comments that residents share, but if you can squint, you can see under that there's actually likes on some of those posts. And that's the great thing about this, is residents are able to get onto this site. It's live. It's up there on the project website right now. So you could go to framework2040.com and see exactly what we're looking at. But the idea here is that not only do we want to hear from residents and their comments, but then we want them to learn from their neighbors and friends and see what others are posting, and then they can share whether they like that idea, and then they can even pile on that idea. So you can see a lot here are getting additional likes and even additional comments. So it's becoming a discussion and a conversation. And so that's fantastic, and that's exactly what we want to see, is having residents have that dialogue that we can learn from. And so this idea wall, I think, has been a great success, and so we plan to keep it up for an extended period to again allow that collaboration to continue. And then, of course, like I mentioned, we also have our surveys. And so the survey is up on the project website as well. I think it's a very kind of interactive survey in terms of it asks questions in different ways. It has visual, as you can see on this particular one. It has pictures to go along with the questions. It often asks residents to respond in different ways, whether it be by prioritizing their responses or putting it on a scale or just doing the typical multiple choice. But it has a lot of different variation to try and keep residents interested, but then also allow us to gain more information. And so, as I mentioned, we also made sure that our in-person events, we do have obviously information boards at those in-person events. We have live polling at those events, and those questions are consistent with this survey. So again, we're able to pull the results of in-person along with virtual to make sure that all the feedback we're collecting is compatible. The last item I'd like to emphasize of the virtual outreach that we have available currently is we spend a lot of time, because the comp plan does predominantly consist of our vision, goals, and policies. And so we're looking at text, right, and thinking about policy, but all of that means something on the ground. And so we also have a map, an interactive map that residents can go to and pull pins on and identify areas of opportunity, areas of challenges, areas that need to be preserved, that we cherish. And so this is another great tool of not only understanding from residents about their ideas, like we talked about on the idea wall, but also physically on a map where they want to make sure we continue to protect what we or any areas that that residents are feeling specific types of pressure. And so again, we similar to the idea wall, they're able to provide a more refined comment once they put the pin about what the issue is in that particular area. So another layer of information that we can use to then inform decision making. So next steps is online engagement is still available. So as you maybe speak with your friends and neighbors, we hope and encourage you to advise them about participating in this, about sharing on the project website. So again, they can go to framework2040.com and view those same idea wall survey and map. And then we expect to come out in just a couple months here in the spring of 2025, as I mentioned on that timeline, with some of that preliminary feedback, because we want to use that, right, as the launch pad, if you will, into how does that then influence potential changes to some of the goals and policies in the plan itself. And I think with that, that concludes my talking points, so we can pause and see if there's questions or comments.
How many people are participating on the
In terms of the public, how many people are? We have a lot of different input points. So our in-person meetings, we're not seeing as high of foot traffic as we might have seen in past efforts, and that's really a trend that we're seeing across a lot of our planning efforts since the pandemic and the rise of our virtual tools. We are seeing a lot more participation virtually. So in person, we're getting good participation, but we're certainly getting more participation virtually. But we're looking at, we're getting a lot of clicks on the websites, hundreds of clicks on the website. We have a great number of comments on the idea wall. I don't have a total number. I didn't look at where our surveys are this morning, but we want to keep the survey open to make sure that we're collecting as much feedback as we can. So always looking to have more, but we don't really have a hard number of the total because we haven't closed that feedback yet. So I apologize.
That's good. Where is the outreach being projected on social media? Are you guys?
Great. That's an excellent question. Yes. So we're working closely with the county's communications team to continue on a regular basis to get information out on social media accounts for the county. But we're also looking at all of the various contact lists that the county manages. So we're sending out e-blasts. We're working with our stakeholders, other agencies, right, that operate within the county and asking them to get the word out. We're working with HOAs, Sun City, for example, and making sure that we're coordinating with them. So we're looking for all channels to get the word out and to share information. We've also gone to our broader media, right, whether it be print or any of those other outlets. So we're trying to look at all channels, but it is a unique aspect of this planning process to manage the unincorporated areas and how we might get out to those pockets. So we're looking for other recommendations as well. But I don't know, Tom or Darren, if you wanted to jump in.
I was gonna just real quickly add, one of the simple things that's done is the county has a process called the Enhanced Regulatory Outreach Program. And our department has a thing we call areas of interest. So on the department website, you can register to be included in EROP for our outreach for regulatory amendments. We've used that mailing list, and it's thousands of people, to send out email blasts, as well as the county maintains a registry of areas of interest. And those are community groups, again, who are solicited if they visit our website. They can register their geographic area of interest. And those are the people that we route case materials to that come before you. And so all those groups have been included in the email blast, as well as a really simple, another real simple issue that's happened is we created on our signature blocks, on all our email signature blocks, we added the, hey, visit Framework 2040. And so every email that we send out is inviting whoever we're dealing with to participate.
I have a few questions, and I can't hear any of the commissioners when they talk, so I don't know if that's a setting, but it'd be great to turn the mics on if that's possible.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yep, I reviewed the comp plan that you guys sent out, so I just wanted to commend you on that. It was actually a very interesting read. We went through some of that in the presentation, but I wonder if you could just comment on like the tensions between like the cities and the counties when something gets annexed, what an area of influence actually means, which is still in the county, but I didn't see a definition for that. I'm not familiar with it. And then, what are some of the tensions around county islands? I know some of it is where the cities think they have to pay for fire and police because we don't have sheriffs nearby, things like that. But just if you could educate me a little bit on those points.
Sure. Chair Milhaven, sorry, I'm still getting used to names. Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
That's a great question. And it's one of the reasons we're here today. Your board is unique in a lot of what we're doing on this outreach effort. It's been a tremendous outreach effort. It's always a challenge with a general plan or a comprehensive plan to just get people interested. They're all interested when it comes to the point of making the decision. So this body here is unique in the feedback that we're getting. And so this is a comment I was hoping somebody would bring up today, is this relationship between the county and the municipalities and where we meet. We meet at those county islands, and we meet at the growth boundaries. We don't quite meet out in the real rural fringes, but those have their own issues. And so what we're looking for in this document and in the feedback is, where are those pain points? What feedback do we get from municipalities on either communication from us? What are their worries? What are some of the worries that you as a commission, when you're sitting up here making your recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, what is it that you're looking for from a policy perspective as we're dealing with a zoning case that happens to be in one of those smaller county islands? As we've seen most recently, there was one in Chandler, dealt with housing, it dealt with the city's infrastructure versus growth. It almost hit every challenge that we've got to a land use decision today. And so we're looking for how that works. Inside of our current comprehensive plan that we rely heavily on the policy that we have about urban infrastructure for urban development. And so policies related to our communications with other municipalities, our understanding of what types of infrastructure, what infrastructure levels would be most important in informing that decision. Those are all things that we're looking for. As we move forward with this, those one of the things that I challenge Matt and his team and our team as well, is we're looking at the issue of county islands themselves. Municipalities have completely surrounded certain county areas. And the infrastructure has bypassed those, and this infrastructure
Can I ask a
surrounds.
question though? Can you hear me, Mihai?
I can, thank you.
Oh, I pressed the right button. My understanding, and correct me if I'm incorrect, that in order to be annexed, the city has to reach out to the county island, and then the county island people have to be open to that.
That's correct. The state statute as it stands today, the annexation process is between the municipality and the property owners themselves. The county is not a party to that decision. So if a municipality were to want to encourage annexation, they then have to reach out to those county residents and ask them for that. What we typically see is the areas that are getting annexed now are those that are experiencing growth, that they're experiencing a development because they're relying on the municipal infrastructure for that development. And so that's typically when we're getting engaged. And so at that point, what the statute requires for an annexation to be approved would be that the municipality designates the area that they're looking at for that annexation, and then there's a petition that goes out, and that petition needs to have the signatures of a majority of the property owners that also represent a majority of that property value. And then they go back to the city council or town council in that area, and then they pass that ordinance that then annexes that municipality. So yes, it is correct. Annexation is up to the property owners as well as the municipalities themselves. But typically what we're seeing at annexation as it relates to decisions you see here, you'll typically see us utilize tools such as pre-annexation development agreements. We're looking for how they're interacting with that municipality. And so those are the types of policies that we would be looking for inside of our comprehensive plan to help you in your decision making towards, is this a good development in this county island? Or are we creating an issue where we're putting a burden upon a municipality that they might not be wanting to inherit? So those are the types of things and thoughts that we're trying to derive as we do this outreach effort in the beginning of this process.
Kind of a follow-up question on that. When you were saying that the municipalities may not want to inherit it, is it kind of, and I read in the comp plan as well that, you know, the idea is that these county islands are going to get annexed over time, presumably. Is that something that's actually part of the goal? Like it's a benefit to the county to have them annexed into the municipalities, or is it a loss of revenue and, you know, seen as a negative?
So that is a good question, because that goal, if that were a goal that were part of the comprehensive plan, we could then utilize that in the efforts as far as regulatory reform in zoning, how we look at zoning, how we look at decision making. It can also be utilized as a goal outside of our level, above me, as far as talking to the state legislature about the ways that annexations and growth and development inside of county islands is affected. And who knows how far that could go as far as effectively informing legislative decisions about the annexation procedures within the state statute themselves. What we see is as growth occurs, I personally, most of my career was out in Mesa, and there are county islands out in Mesa that developed in the county decades ago. The city themselves has grown out and around, but because growth occurred decades ago, infrastructure inside of those county islands is aging. So that puts a burden upon how do we maintain that infrastructure? How do you work with the municipality to be interested in wanting to take that infrastructure on? Those are some of the issues that we deal with inside of then we see that reflected in our code compliance efforts. So a policy related to this type of discussion inside of our comprehensive plan, although to be broad, would be how do we work with municipalities on those types of efforts. We hear from them all the time about, hey, I need this cleaned up, we need that cleaned up. Or, hey, we've got this coming in, this development, it doesn't quite fit with what we're looking at. How do we address those? And so at the comprehensive plan level, it's that broad level, but where the rubber meets the road is really in this room in front of you all. And those are the types of things that we're looking at, is if county island growth, county island maintenance is something that's of importance. It's something that we're looking for feedback from on this commission that we could work into the comprehensive plan goals and policies.
So again, just on the same line of questions, because I think this is just important for me to understand. I saw in the comp plan there was some conversation around planned communities that happen, by the municipalities, and then there are some that happen within the county islands or just the county itself. Is it normal that those communities get annexed at some point, or do they typically stay within the county?
It's another good question. They're all good questions today. So there are a couple of different ways that communities grow out in the county areas. Sometimes we deal with a developer who comes in. Is that an emergency? Okay. The developer comes in and we ask immediately, our first question is, one, if it's in a municipal planning area, what is their general plan? How does that relate to our comprehensive plan? Where is the available infrastructure? What is the plan moving forward for that? Sometimes we'll see zoning requests come through here that we know they're working on pre-annexation development agreements with municipality. And as far as timing and growth, that annexation occurs in the progress of the development. There are other developments out in the county. The largest ones that you're most aware of would be Anthem, Sun City themselves. Those are all large communities out in the county. At the time that those were approved, questions were asked about, are there mechanisms for the maintenance of the infrastructure? Are there mechanisms that take care of the public safety aspect? Where is the water and sewer coming? Is the drainage aspect taken care of? Those county island areas are what we would call self-maintaining. They're almost a municipality in and to themselves, in the fact that all of that was set up at the time of development. And so those are questions that need to be asked and answered as the development happens itself. Who is ultimately in charge of those aspects of it? Are they taken care of? And then as we're asking this commission to make the recommendations onto the board, are all those aspects being taken care of if we don't have any don't have any confidence that they'll be annexed anytime soon? Will they be able to be self-sustaining inside of an unincorporated area of Maricopa County?
Are there, when you guys put this plan together, are there budget considerations you guys take? I mean, I'm sure there's revenue that comes from, Anthem and Sun City as an example, that goes directly to the county from a tax standpoint. Is that something you guys look at?
So as it relates to development, what we look at is cost of development. In fact, it's actually an element of the comprehensive plan itself, is cost of development. But typically, cost of development is who bears the burden of the increased cost as it relates to growth and development in that area. And so that relates back into the whole analysis of the infrastructure itself. Where are the streets? How are the streets maintained? Is there capacity within the water system? Is there capacity within the sewer system? We have municipalities provide those infrastructures. There are also private water and sewer providers that also provide those. It goes into the analysis of what is the cost and who bears that cost and what mechanisms do they have in place inside of their own fees to take care of that. The county in and of itself is not a utility provider. So that makes a decision in a county and in the county island very important in the fact of where are those utilities coming from. And one of the questions you'd be asking yourself is, will they be able to sustain that level of service if this community were to remain in the county?
Thank you. Last question from me. I don't want to monopolize all the time here. So thank you everybody for your patience. Water is a big thing, and you guys talked about it in the comp plan as well, and a little bit during the presentation. And a lot of it from a percentage standpoint, I'm trying to remember now, maybe it's like 30% of it comes from groundwater currently in the county. And there was some talk around it being depleted. Could you just provide a little color to that? Just some of the concerns, maybe some things for us to think about and read about.
Could you restate that question again? The part I got was you wanted me to add color to brown water.
No. More context around the water problems.
Okay.
We're dealing with.
Right. So the water issue, that's also another important thing as we've gone out in the community that's come up a lot. Housing comes up a lot, growth comes up a lot, water comes up a lot. Right now, any new development needs to show a certification of that 100-year water supply. And so that's what we're looking for, is the reliability of the water source as new development comes in. That's a mandate down through the state, it's mandate through our subdivision regulations. At a comprehensive plan level, we would be looking at a policy statement or a goal statement that would say we support those efforts that continue the sustainability of the water resource or the limited water resources that we have inside of Maricopa County itself. And so at the comprehensive plan level, looking at that, but as it trickles down through all of our other policies, even into our environmental services department, as they look at the water service and sewer service, water resources is actually regulated by the state itself. And so what we do within our regulations, making sure we're in line with that, and as it relates to our policies, is really what we're looking at the comprehensive plan level. Are we being good stewards of the water that's allocated towards those areas in the state?
Tom, can I, Madam Chair and Commissioner, to go back to Commissioner Soma's question, an example of a 30,000 foot policy in the comprehensive plan that exists today and likely will carry forward is that there must be urban services for urban development. You'll hear us say that a lot. It's page 30 of our current comp plan. And so the idea is urban services for urban development means what is the expected response for emergency fire protection? What's the expected response for police protection? Is there water availability and is there sewer capacity? Those in practice, as the development comes through, you're gonna see the zoning, and then we'll later administratively look at subdivisions. But as that comes through, you'll hear us quote that policy or whatever future policy we have along those regards. Usually that means they're going into the city. The city's going to enter into a pre-annexation utility service agreement to provide water and sewer. With the subdivision, they have to have that assured water supply. Usually that's through the municipal service. So that's how that applies. There's a real big 30,000 foot level in these policies, urban services for urban development. And then it gets more specific as we go down that inverted triangle. In general, county is not set up for urban development. County government is not set up to govern urban development. That's why we, even though they may come through here for entitlement, ultimately that development at some point is usually going to get annexed in the city. Tom didn't mention the Sun City West, and Anthem, which are urban development and likely to stay in the county in perpetuity. So you don't usually see, experience has shown me that it's unusual to have annexation of developed county islands. And it's not necessarily any benefit to remain in the county for urban development.
Yes.
This is sparking a lot of questions for me, but I won't be long. With public safety, fire protection, there is such a changing evolution going on in the private fire protection. The fire districts that are suffering throughout, Arizona and different areas. And because what I found being at Mesa and different things is the burden just happens. It just happens. There's a fire out in the county. There's not adequate fire protection. The cities have to go out. I think of the Wildcat subdivisions that are kind of up in that north area, La Sendas area now farther. Fire trucks that are getting stuck in sand washes because the roads go through. There just isn't the infrastructure. And I do remember, maybe Tom can speak to this, the city, the last time I was involved was, hey, we're not putting water out there anymore. We're not going to extend water and different things. And so it's really, this is a learning experience for me is what do we do at a county level through this process and how, when I speak of fire protection, I've seen private fire companies now that have been sold again and again. And the cities are kind of pulling their hair out. Who's going to provide this protection out there? Because we will be called, the cities say we're going to be called, could be potentially dangerous. So just that whole public safety, and even on the sheriff coverage, wonderful individuals doing their best out there, spread far and thin. Cities are having to, respond out to backup and different things. So it'll be interesting to see as we go through this process, what can be done here to make sure that some of those burdens and concerns, especially out in that. Yeah,
So again, another great question. And what we do at this level, the policies would be more of collaboration and discussions with municipalities, with the various fire districts. It is one of the challenges we have. You'd mentioned Mesa's policies about delivery of water outside of their municipality. Within the municipalities, every municipality has a different policy on how they allocate their infrastructure, whether they will or they won't outside their municipalities. It's very surprising the various differences of the municipalities themselves. It's the same with the fire districts. Fire districts all regulate different things differently. Some require sprinklering, some require, I don't know where I'm going now, but they required, case in point, we had a discussion on solar generation and battery energy storage systems the other day. The Arizona Fire Authority had recommended certain distances. We've adopted those informally as something that we start with for that discussion. As it goes through, if it's in rural metros area, it's still up to that rural metro fire authority to let us know, do you have concerns and can you serve that area under the circumstances that are being provided? So our policies internally in our department, as it's related to what you're discussing, is to have those discussions as early on in the process as physically possible, and then try to maintain that relationship throughout so that we understand those positions, so that when we come here and we give you our final analysis, we can at least tell you what we're hearing from either the municipality or the fire authority or from the sheriff's department themselves about that type of service out in an unincorporated area.
Any other questions from folks online?
Just one that was sparked there. And I think Darren, you had said there's no reason for someone within a county island to not want to be annexed, but just want to make sure maybe I heard that correctly, because my understanding was sometimes they want to take advantage of the city services that are around, but the property taxes are actually lower within a county island. So there's an incentive for a homeowner to remain within a county island. Or do I not understand that correctly?
not to speak out of turn, but I think the issue was, there's no advantage to the county to maintain developed county, to have urban development in the county. There's lots of advantages to residents to want to go into a municipality. They may want to stay in the county because of lower taxes. Largely that's perception, because they also have to subscribe to waste hauling service, fire protection subscription. There's a lot of subscriptions. And so I think a lot of times it's more perception than reality when everything's taken into account.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
And then I do have a question about water, because I know the issue with shared water supply is not applicable to developments of 5 or fewer dwelling units. Does the county have is there any opportunity in this process to try to address that concern, right? Big developers just break up into smaller LLCs and build 5 houses at a time to get around the water requirements. Is there any opportunity to address? I know that's the state regulation, but is there any opportunity in this process?
So we can look at the policy stuff. So what you're talking about is unregulated subdivisions, which are, for lack of a better word, is lot splitting. In the county, it is 5 or fewer splits. There are things that we've had discussions about at the legislative level about ways of accomplishing that. If somebody were to come in on development on a split lot, the first thing that we're asking them for is where are you obtaining your water from? Is it from a private seller? Right now, to obtain a building permit, hauled water is an option through our building codes to show that you're getting service to your home.
To change that, that would have to be a legislative fix.
If we were going to, for the requirement to have for a certified water, yes, that would go through the legislature.
So we can't do it here.
But if you say hauled water is allowed, is there any due diligence to make sure that the hauled water source is adequate?
That's something I'll have to look into on the legality of that type of requirement. When somebody comes in, we're looking for access, we're looking for utility service, we're looking for the layout of the property itself as it relates to our zoning regulations, and then to the building codes themselves. Whether or not we could require somebody as a municipality or as that entity to then require that whatever source they're hauling their water from comes from 100-year supply. I don't have the answer for that right now, but I could look into that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. If there are no other comments or questions, thank you. Very, very well done presentation. Thank you. So are there any? Sorry.
Adam has asked.
Yes.
Any of the commissioners may wish to participate in the technical advisory committee for the planning efforts that would be sitting in on certain stakeholder meetings. I think we're looking for just a couple participants. If anyone is wishing to volunteer, think about that.
Okay, so anyone who wants to serve on the technical, say that again, the technical advisory committee, any of the commissioners who want to serve on the technical advisory committee, please let Darren know. You're going to volunteer somebody else?
Aaron, could you repeat that with the mic on for those of us that are not there in the room? Thank you.
I apologize. There's a technical advisory committee meeting that attends a certain number of meetings over this course of this year. And it has representatives from various agencies that participate. We were thinking it may be good to have a couple commissioners participate in that process. So if anybody's interested, please let the chair know, and maybe they'll appoint you, or reach out to us and we'll talk.
If anybody's interested, let Darren know.
Yeah,
Darren and Jimmy know.
What we don't want is we're not expecting everybody to participate. You know, there's quorum issues with that. But if there are a couple people of the 10 appointed commissioners that wish to.
Can you say more about what the time commitment is, people?
Yeah, that's all great. So a little color commentary. The Technical Advisory Committee is just that sounding board, right? We can't go out to the public as much as we want. And so we use the Technical Advisory Committee that is comprised of departments within the county, as well as some other key stakeholders that operate within the county. And so we just meet with them on a probably quarterly basis almost. It's not a significant commitment, but it would be some additional meetings where we go through similar information and then we bounce thoughts and ideas off this group as that first level of sounding board, so that then when we go out to the public, that we have a little first round of conversation. So hopefully that gives a little idea, but we conduct the meetings virtually, so you would be able to join and attend virtually. And if you're interested in this process, then that would be a great kind of to have a seat at that table, because you would see some of the material kind of earlier in the chain, if you will. Then we're going to come back to you moving forward with updates, but you'll see things a little bit more frequently as part of that group.
Thank you. Anything else? No? Are there any other matters to come before the commission? Nope. In that case, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.